Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast. This is the official podcast of A Simple House. This is a summer 2022 update. We're going to go about what's going down at Simple House right now. We're going to talk about Simple House recruiting, what makes a good missionary. And I also want to talk about the future of the podcast and get some ideas and some feedback on that. I'd like to get some more people to interview, and I'd like to hear who you'd like to hear on our podcast. I've already gotten the feedback that interviews are great. And I've also gotten the feedback that Laura needs more time on the podcast. And I didn't follow that because I'm recording this by myself without Laura. Somebody had a toothache. So Laura could not be here. Wasn't Laura, it was one of the kids. Okay. Simple House right now, we're in the summer season, which is always kind of our reset season. Anyone who's not going to commit to another year at Simple House leaves the ministry at the end of May, and then we kind of have a couple months of kind of circling the wagons, and then we start the new community in August, and it lets kind of the longer time missionaries kind of get ready to welcome new people. At the end of May, we do a graduation ceremony for people who've been here a year, and your house director comes up, says nice things about you, get a little party where your friends can come. That's all nice. But if you've been here for 3 years or more, you are kind of at the end of your useful life and you're put out to pasture and you are retired. And this year we retired Sadie Facile. Just like 1950s America, she got a gold watch for doing her time at the factory. And I said a very nice speech about her where I pointed out all the struggles that I've had with her and that she's had at Simple House. It's a very powerful speech. So if you are one of our historic missionaries, I'm thinking of a couple out there, maybe Bianca Tropiano, maybe Jess Barnes, and you never got your gold watch, contact me and I'll send you a Timex Easy Reader. You at least deserve that. Also, what's going on this summer is longtime friend of the ministry and also old Simple House missionary, Mark Eckstein. He's also working on our Just Homes project. Mark Eckstein was our Nicaraguan missionary. Him and his family, and Laura Eckstein, his wife, went down to Nicaragua, started a mission, and then when the country went into political upheaval, had to be evacuated out of that mission. We still have some people who worked for our mission still down there receiving some aid from us. Even now, Mark hopes to return someday and check on it when kind of the coast is clear down there. But he is installing a kitchen upgrade at the Kansas City Simple House this summer so we can host groups better. Like we frequently have 30 people for dinner and we have less than a standard residential kitchen. So we're not doing a very good job over there and he's going to improve that for us. And in August, we're having the DC crew come out. It's always a great time during training. We call it Revival. We have about 2 weeks with all the new missionaries, all the old missionaries. We hang out together as a complete community, and that's what Revival is. This year has also been the year of weddings, starting with Mary Kate's wedding, longtime missionary. Ben, the producer of this podcast, just got married. That's why there was a little hiatus. That and Laura and I misrecorded or made some bad podcasts, so that's also why there's a little hiatus on releasing stuff. Congratulations, Ben. Ben's editing this right now. No, he's not. I'm recording this right now. Ben will get this and edit this before you see it. But we also have Gabe, longtime missionary, getting married, coming back to Kansas City as a destination wedding, which is kind of funny. He's living in Minnesota, but he's going to get married in KC. His family's not here either, which is just kind of great that he decided to get married here. And we also have Chelsea, very long time Simple House missionary, 7+ years, still our house director in DC. She's getting married out in DC. Hoping to go to that in about 2 weeks. And all of these weddings incorporated ministry friends. It was really awesome. It's really awesome to me that like the missionaries have such real friendships that they want us to like drive a missionary friend from here to Indiana or Iowa or wherever you're getting married. We dissuade them from that because it's kind of a tough thing to do, but they insist, and then we did it. And so it's just kind of a cool little fruit of the ministry that happens. Let's talk recruiting. we need help finding the 1 in 1,000 college grad. You don't actually have to graduate college, but that's the typical situation. Who would fit with Simple House? That black sheep that would fit, that would make a great Simple House missionary, and this would appeal to them. I once sat with Jordan Sheila. He runs a ministry called Jerusalem Farms, and he goes, "What do you guys look for, in a community member or a missionary?" And I go, "Well, they need to be a believing Catholic, kind of agree with all the church's teachings. They have to have a real heart for the poor. They have to want to live voluntary poverty. They have to, have some basic, skill set that they can, work with us, and we get along at some level." And after I said, and I was like, "And we just can't find enough." And he goes, "Well, that's really selective." And I was like, I'd never thought of it that way before. All right, we're really selective, but we do need some recruits. So if you know that 1 in 1,000 person, they could be dopey, they could be nerdy, they could be geeky, they could be a punk rocker, but they could be a good Simple House missionary. Please tell them to apply to Simple House. We usually accept applications at any time, but really they start coming in around February and start drying up around June to start the next August. So we don't know how to get the word out to the UNLVs of the world, the colleges where I'm sure there's a good missionary somewhere, someone who I identify with, who is like me, who felt alone but felt a spark and wanted to go explore it. We don't know how to catch those people. So if you've got ideas for that, please send it to the Simple House email address. Give us some suggestions and we'll try it. We have 2 new initiatives for this year for recruiting because I think we're ready to expand to our 3rd city if we can just start recruiting at a level about 5 to 8 a year. We got that a couple years in a row, but this year's a little bit down, so we need help. What was I going to say? We got 2 new initiatives. One's top secret. I'm just telling you that it exists. I can't tell you anything else about it. The other one is we're going to start people trying to regionally recruit at 5-6 colleges, form those relationships with campus ministers or focus missionaries to try to see if they know any of their students who might be a good fit with us. So if you're interested in that, let me know that too. When someone applies to be a missionary at Simple House, the very first question on the application is to tell their faith story. It's usually basically a question to tell your conversion story, but for some people, they don't have a conversion story because maybe they were raised in the faith and there's no one point they can point to, and even with conversion stories, there's usually multiple points you can point to. There's multiple moments of really turning to God, something clicking, something registering, something where you really feel God's love. I'd also like to point out, this is an aside, you see this electrical tape here? Ben, the podcast producer, hates the way I use microphones. And so one solution was to get a microphone holder. So he gives me a microphone holder that doesn't work. So I have to duct tape, or rather electrical tape, my microphone to it. I hope it works. All right. Back to the thing. What's your faith story? This question's interesting. And really, there's an infinite number of real stories that can be told there. Unimaginable stories could be told there. And some of them are funny. I remember one that I particularly liked that was about choosing what lunch table you sit at in middle school and choosing to sit at the less popular lunch table because it was kind of the right thing to do at that time. And that was a great conversion moment. So, some of these stories sound silly, but the real question is, do these stories resonate? Do they make sense to other people? Are you communicating some of the specialness of your relationship with God to someone else? Because if you can't say anything about your faith life or the most important parts of your faith life in a way that resonates with someone who's sympathetic and hopefully someone who's not even sympathetic, there's no evangelization there. It's kind of it's the very first level test. And we get people who apply who don't really have a way to talk about God in their life in a way that resonates. And you kind of wonder when someone applies like that and they kind of have nothing to say to this question, or they have something to say that's just so cookie cutter. It just seems like they're just trying to say what you want to hear. I think it's because a lot of us view evangelization as a duty, as a box, as a very noble thing to do, as something you should do. I think that's a terrible motivation. I don't want anyone here because they should be here. I want people here who want to be here, who are excited to be here, who have a call to be here, who there's some excitement in this idea of evangelization. If you're doing evangelization because of a bunch of shoulds and you're not doing right if you don't do what you should, go away. It's just not something that ever helps anyone else when you're motivated by that. When I say go away, I mean go find a different faith journey for the moment, and hopefully you'll come around. The other thing I think is because some people, it's been really like logical to them that like heaven and hell are very important, salvation's very important, and the faith formation they received was largely an indoctrination. And they know that they can give that indoctrination to someone else because they know the doctrines and they know how to talk and they know how to like make arguments for all these doctrines. And that's also kind of a zero. Like you can indoctrinate a captive audience. You can indoctrinate your own kids in the faith. It's not my favorite way to raise kids, but it works a little bit. But there's no way to talk to another adult in a way that you can indoctrinate them. There's just no real cash value to that as evangelization. So there has to become a way where it becomes deeply personal, where it becomes the hard-won truth that you discovered and that you can bring that has really helped you. And then you have the kind of gateway to evangelization. A lot of our missionaries are coming from very Catholic environments. And what I mean by that is there's a number of colleges that fall into this. They're good colleges, and I actually really enjoy visiting them. But there's something about them where that the more Catholic you are, the more your status goes up. And there's problems with that. That's a very tricky situation. One situation is you don't know if you're rightly motivated with your faith. You don't know if you're coming to God correct, in a sense, because you're getting rewarded for coming to God in this earthly way and the whole culture around you. And the other problem with it is you're so surrounded in, sometimes I call it the Catholic bubble, that's who you're speaking to. That's your audience. And it's not an evangelical voice. It's not a voice helping people with the real problems of the modern world right now. It's often you're kind of saying the right answer. You're saying what you should say. That's a big warning in an interview when someone is trying to tell you the right answer. What's your greatest fault? Well, my greatest fault is I'm a perfectionist. Forget it. All right. This is kind of why I had the very imperfect, awesome man, Nick Dollinger, on as a guest a couple episodes ago. He's got the Beautiful Toilet podcast. I loved what he does, not because I agree with Nick on everything, not because I don't think he's young or has his errors or whatever. It's because he's having heart-to-heart conversations. He's having authentic conversations, long form with people who are crazy different than him. He's a Catholic, he's observant, and he's like talking to like gay men who collect perfume and are reactionary conservatives, like just weird situations. And they're telling him what they really believe. He's honoring all the truth in that. He's telling him what he really believes. It resonates often. They have a beautiful interaction. And I know it's kind of struck me that all evangelization is heart-to-heart conversation. I believe that the people who leave from talking to Nick are influenced for the good. They're influenced because some of the things he says will strike them. Is he like teaching them new doctrines? Is he cracking open his catechism? No. But are they more likely to go take the catechism seriously, or to go take the Word of God seriously, or to take another Catholic seriously after they meet him? 100% yes. That's very powerful. The other end of the spectrum is something I remember from college, like 20 years ago. I went to a college that's kind of famous for being very liberal in this part of the world, the University of Kansas. And when I went to class one day, I saw a man, and he was kind of wearing clothes that kind of made him look Amish, kind of like homemade looking clothes, but he was definitely not Amish. Nothing else about him signaled Amish. There wasn't the weird beard. There wasn't the hat, but he had a kind of an blousey shirt on, suspenders that were kind of homemade, and, pants. And he was kind of a big guy, big blonde guy. And he had a Bible in his hand, and he was sitting in the lawn in front of the journalism school preaching up a storm, and most people were just passing him, not noticing him. But I've always had this weird heart for crazy street preachers. So like I kind of pass him and I'm like kind of admiring him at some level. Like, look at this guy who felt so moved he had to come, across the state or whatever and take a stand in the journalism lawn, and say his piece, right? And I went to class and I came back by maybe an hour and a half later, and there was a circle around him when I came back and they were jeering him. And while I kind of started watching and I was very kind of confused, like, what is this? Like, what are you really watching here? Is this Christ? Is this a real preacher? What is this, And someone throws their coffee on him. And I was kind of aghast. I was aghast that kind of, in a way, got physical. Nobody got punched, but it's not right to throw your coffee on anybody. And I watched a while longer, and it just kept being jeering, and he kept, flailing around, preaching, and telling people about hell. And I left. It kind of got boring after a little while, and I left. But I've always been kind of troubled by that interaction, like this trouble of like having respect for that man, being like upset at the way that he was treated, but also being like, didn't he kind of have it coming at some level, And the longer I've thought about that, I feel like everyone got what they wanted from that, except maybe me. I think the crowd got what they wanted from that interaction, and I think that preacher got what he wanted. There was no evangelization. There was no persuasion. There was no edification. But the preacher, I believe, woke up one day and thought, I need to show how brave I am for Christ or for the church, and I'm going to go confront these sinners, and I'm going to go preach in the most depraved place I know of, University of Kansas, my alma mater. And I'm going to tell him the way it is, uncompromisingly, and stand up for the truth, right? And he did. And then the group that surrounded him, he kind of represented everything that a certain type of kind of progressive hates in religion. This kind of condemning religion, this you're not right, you're evil religion, this you should be ashamed of yourself religion, right? And they got to kind of act out their part, and we had like a full-blown Greek tragedy on our hands. It was like cathartic for both people. Like one person got to be a hero and got, spit on or whatever, I don't know that he actually got spit on, but I mean, he got to be with Christ, alienated like that. And the other group got to, get the boogeyman that they've always been worried about, who you almost never really meet. Like most people I know who like hate this caricature of Christianity weren't ever oppressed by that caricature of Christianity, but this guy was like giving him a chance to actually meet it, like in flesh, that caricature. So that's just a big zero when it comes to evangelization. And we need to make sure that we're not doing some micro version of that. I don't really have it's kind of like when you try to go out and get martyred, you're never trying to get martyred. Like you should never try to give an irrelevant witness. You should always be trying to give the most relevant witness. You don't say the truth just for the truth's sake. You say the truth to help people. And you embody the truth, and that will help people, and that will be the truth for the truth's sake. But we get kind of screwed up in the head when we think about just like going out there, witnessing to the truth, and taking bullets as like the most honorable way to be. So, if some good missionaries, some thoughtful people who, another question we ask on that recruiting application is, do you have any friends who aren't Catholic? And I didn't rephrase that to say, have you known them for a while and would you share your problems with them? Like, are you having like real honorable conversations with them? And if you aren't, you should start, because that's going to be the way you start bringing the message of Christ out. I feel like when I'm not really against these like protected Catholic environments, I might send my own kid to one. There's a certain need for it sometimes. But it's not the best, there's a sense in which it's making up for a little limitation we have when we choose to put ourselves in those environments all the time. we need to also be choosing to put ourselves vulnerably in these other environments with the non-believers, with the people who really disagree with you. All right, podcast ideas. Ever since we brought the pop culture catechist, Mike Tenney, on like 6 months ago, I've been getting a lot more. I just was told feedback's been have more interviews. So I want to have Mike Tenney on again for our first repeat guest, but I also need interview suggestions. I would like to explore a little bit more about what's going on in Catholic education right now. I think Laura's lining us up a guest on classical education, try to explain that and try to, talk about the importance of kind of switching paradigms on education. I'm kind of in the Montessori world with my kids, going to a Montessori school and helping the nuns try to figure out how to expand that. I'd like to have someone on about that. I'd also feel like there's a lot of good, interesting people who've written books, and maybe the book has a limited academic audience, but we could have a very interesting conversation about it. So if you know anyone who you'd like to hear on our podcast, an interview or even a topic suggestion, feel free to leave it in a comment on YouTube or to email us through the Simple House website, asimplehouse.org, and please sign up for a newsletter if you're not already signed up. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you soon, and hopefully we'll have Mike Tenney and get Laura on here soon too. God bless, and talk to you later. And congratulations, Ben, on getting married, and thank you for being our producer. I'm not really thanking you for this thing, but I am curious if it worked.